Why is my photo missing? I whispered. My voice trembled. On the welcome table, framed in silver, was the image of her, smiling, proud, posed between my son and my late husband. My face was gone, cropped, deleted. I had arrived early. It was supposed to be a day of joy, my only son's wedding. A moment I had dreamed of since he first learned to walk. But what greeted me was not pride. It was absence, erasure. There were rows of family photos on display at the venue. A timeline of love growth memories, except the ones that included me. My seat card read, "Reserved, Evelyn T., no mother of the groom." No title, just a placeholder. And when I approached the altar, I noticed something else. Her mother was seated in the front row center aisle. My seat a row behind, next to the sound system. Let me take you back. I'm not a bitter woman. I'm not here to cause scenes or demand attention. I've built a life around quiet strength. My husband Gregory passed away 6 years ago. We built our family business from scratch, one sandwich shop that grew into a regional chain. We worked side by side for 30 years, raised a kind, smart boy, Michael. When Gregory passed, I stepped back. I let Michael take over, supported from behind, never interfered. Then he met her. Claire. Claire was smart, articulate, confident, and I welcomed her truly. Until slowly I began to notice a shift. At family dinners, she would dominate the conversation. When I tried to speak, she would interject with phrases like, "We've already discussed, that haven't we, Mike? Oh, Evelyn, that's just your generation's way." The gifts I brought were sweet, but old-fashioned. My offers to help with wedding planning were so kind, but we've got a team for that. Still, I told myself, let them shine. Let them lead. This is their time. So I waited until the week of the wedding. There was no call for my dress fitting, no confirmation on the ceremony order, no mother-son dance rehearsal. I asked Michael softly, "Darling, do you want me to say a few words at the reception?" He hesitated, then said, "Claire thought it might be better to keep the speeches tight, less formal, just a thank you from the two of us." I nodded. My heart didn't. The morning of the wedding, I sat in my living room alone. There was no stylist arriving at my door, no chauffeur. I had to book a taxi. I wore a powder blue silk dress I had saved for years. Gregory once said I looked radiant in it. I touched my locket, his photo inside, and I prayed silently. Let today be beautiful, even if I'm invisible. The ceremony began. I sat behind her mother, who was wearing a couture gown and had given a speech during the welcome toast. She cried tears that earned applause, and I sat quietly. When the father-daughter dance ended, Claire made a toast. To my mother, who taught me strength, to my family, who taught me elegance, and to our future, which is ours to shape together. Michael glanced at me, just once. No words. After the dinner, I wandered into the side hall. There it was, the welcome table with old family photographs, except they were modified. In the central frame was a photoshopped image, Michael as a teen Claire in my place, her hand resting on Gregory's shoulder. The original had been our family photo, the one I took with my boys at the Grand Canyon. I remember the wind that day, Gregory's laugh, and how Michael's arm wrapped protectively around me. Now it was Claire, seamlessly edited in. I looked for a single image of me. There was one, tucked behind the guest book, half obscured by a floral arrangement, a blurry candid, No caption, no frame. I turned away. I stepped outside, dialed a number, a private one. My voice steady. Hi, this is Evelyn Thomas. Yes. Move ahead with the transition. Starting Monday, I'm reactivating my shares in the company. I paused. And schedule a full audit. All department heads, including marketing, will report to me directly, effective immediately. Then I added, and send Claire the employment update. She won't be continuing. My story doesn't begin with conflict. It begins with silence, grit, and 4 a.m. mornings. When Gregory and I married, we had a rusted van, a freezer full of frozen meat, and one dream: open a sandwich shop. We leased a corner spot near the train station. I painted the walls myself. Greg designed the logo with a ballpoint pen on a napkin. We named it Greg and Evie's. At first, no one came. Winter mornings, we sat behind the counter in coats, hoping someone would order soup. I worked the register. Greg handled the grill. On Sundays, we closed early, counted receipts, and dreamed about hiring help. Years passed, and slowly the regulars came. The teacher who loved our roast beef melt, the young man who proposed in our back booth, the mayor who asked us to cater City Hall. We opened a second shop, then a third. By the time Michael was born, we had 10 locations. By his 5th birthday, we had 50. Michael was our everything. He grew up behind the counter, napping in the storage room, counting tomatoes for fun. I taught him to read with our menu. He'd wear a little apron, take pretend orders from stuffed animals. As he grew, I taught him business, not just numbers, but people. Never look down on the dishwasher, I'd say. The person sweeping the floor deserves the same respect as the one signing checks. He listened, always. He was a good boy, quiet, bright, observant. Gregory passed away when Michael was 25. A heart attack, sudden and merciless. We were in the middle of a franchise expansion meeting. Greg looked at me, smiled, then collapsed. I held his hand in the ambulance. His last words to me were, "Take care of Michael. Don't let anyone change who he is." After the funeral, I sat in Greg's office and made a decision. I gave Michael controlling interest in the company. I moved to an advisory role. I said, "It's yours now. I trust you." He cried. So did I. When Michael introduced Claire, I was genuinely happy for him. She was radiant, confident. She had a way of making people feel small, but I assumed it was nerves. She worked in branding, marketing, presentation. She said things like, "Perception drives performance." The story is more important than the history. Legacy is branding, Evelyn. I didn't understand all of it, but I knew one thing she didn't like: the way Greg and Evie's felt. Too nostalgic, too homegrown, too dated. One day I walked into a meeting and found them discussing a new name for the business, GE Collective. I felt my breath catch. I looked at Michael. He looked away. Rather than argue, I stepped further back. I told myself, let them modernize, let them lead. I started gardening, volunteering. I cooked Sunday dinner each week and invited them. Sometimes they came, more often they didn't. One day I brought over my wedding album, asked Claire if she wanted any photos for the wedding montage. She smiled, said, "Don't worry, Evelyn. We're going for a clean, consistent aesthetic." My hands were still holding the album when she closed the door. Looking back, I see it. The subtle ways I was moved from center to corner. No seat at planning meetings, no mention in press releases, no consultation on foundation decisions. But I always told myself, they're busy. The world has changed. Stay out of the way. Even when I found out Claire's name had been added to the board of trustees, even when she started signing internal emails as co-founder, I stayed quiet. I didn't want Michael to feel torn. I wanted peace, even if it cost me presence. Michael stopped by. He hugged me, distracted, glanced at his phone. I gave him a gift, a cufflink box. Inside were Greg's wedding cufflinks and a letter. He thanked me, but didn't open it in front of me. I asked softly, "Do I still have a role tomorrow?" He smiled. "Of course, Mom." That night I sat in my room alone. I remembered the day he was born, how Greg cried when he first held him, how I whispered into that tiny ear, "You are my legacy." Now I wasn't even part of his narrative. The venue was a historic estate stone pillars, lavender fields, string quartets. Claire's touch was everywhere. The welcome banner read, "Claire and Michael, a modern union of legacy and vision." Legacy, vision. But no mention of the woman who raised the groom. The first person to greet me was the coordinator. "And you are Evelyn Thomas, mother of the groom." She checked her clipboard, then said, "Oh, right. You're listed under Gregory's spouse." Then she smiled apologetically. "You're seated in Section C, just behind the floral team and media staff." As guests arrived, I tried to find my place. The bridesmaids walked by, laughing, radiant. Claire's mother was surrounded by stylists and photographers. Someone asked me to please step back as I crossed near the photo area. They were filming the behind-the-scenes documentary, the same documentary Claire had commissioned. No one had asked if I'd like to be interviewed. No one had asked for my story. I stood to the side, sipping water from a paper cup. Then came the moment I will never forget. I walked to the welcome table. There were framed photos spanning decades Claire's childhood. Michael in high school. Gregory. With Claire. I leaned closer. It was my original photo, only my face had been replaced. Cleanly. Technically perfect. Claire's image was inserted next to my late husband. Michael on the other side. As if I'd never existed. My breath caught. My legs trembled. No one said anything. No one noticed me pause. And in that silence, I realized I had been erased. Beautifully, strategically, publicly. The ceremony began. Claire walked down the aisle with ease. Applause followed. Michael looked handsome, a touch nervous. He didn't look at me. The officiant opened with a poetic line. "Today we celebrate not only a union of two souls, but the rebirth of a new family." Claire's mother gave the first toast. She spoke of raising a visionary. She spoke of welcoming Michael like a son. She ended with "To Claire, who carries her family's elegance and has found her perfect equal." Applause. Then Michael stood. He thanked our incredible families. He mentioned Claire's uncle's cousins, even her college mentor. Not once did he say my name. After the ceremony, a line formed for photos. There was a backdrop floral arch drone camera above. A wedding party assistant approached. "Ma'am, this area's reserved for immediate family." I blinked. "I'm his mother." She checked her phone scrolled, then said, "You're not listed on the core photography call sheet." Sorry. Claire's family had already taken 10 photos. I stood there, powder blue dress hair, curled just right, like I had walked onto the wrong set. Later in the reception tent, a video began playing. It was a tribute to the journey of Claire and Michael. Music played. Claire's childhood. Her school photos. her mother holding her hand, her father lifting her in the air. Then Michael appeared, his baby years, teen sports college moments. Then came the montage of family legacy, the business Greg and I built. But every photo was of Greg and Michael, Greg and Claire, Greg even with Claire's parents. No Evelyn, not once. After the video, I found Michael. Quietly, gently, I asked, "Did you notice? I wasn't in any of that." He looked at me, tired, rushed, unsure. "Mum, I didn't manage the details. Claire's team handled the visuals. It's not personal. Don't make this a thing." I nodded. But it was personal, because I had spent decades building every frame they used. My hands had baked, built, mended, budgeted, so they could stand on stages I never got to step on. Later, I overheard one of Claire's relatives ask a child, "Where's Grandma?" The girl pointed at Claire's mother. "There she is." I smiled, thinking maybe she meant me, but the girl added, "That's the real one, the one who lives with them." I stepped back, felt my locket press against my chest. Dinner began. I walked to my assigned seat. Claire's mother had a place of honor next to the couple. My card was missing. A staffer whispered, "I think you're at table 9, with vendors and distant cousins." There was a mistake, but no one corrected it. I sat, in silence, next to a man who sold floral installations. He asked what I did. I smiled. I used to run a company once, and I had a son. As the party rolled on, I excused myself and slipped into the garden behind the venue. The stars were just starting to peek out, the music muffled behind the glass walls. My phone buzzed. It was an email. Subject line: board transition. Notice immediate attention requested. I had sent the initial message earlier that afternoon, in the quiet rage after seeing my photo replaced. Now the wheels were turning. That morning I had written a letter, not to Michael, not to Claire, but to Gregory. I tried to stay silent, to let go, to be kind. But today, I watched the past we built get rewritten with me erased from it. And worse, our son didn't blink. So I'm done waiting for permission to matter again. I folded the letter and placed it in my locket. My legacy wasn't theirs to edit. 10 years ago, when Gregory and I created our succession plan, we included a clause. If at any point the leadership of the company acted in ways that damaged legacy, threatened core values, or attempted to alter founding identity without full approval, control could revert temporarily to the original co-founder. That was me. Michael had forgotten. Claire never knew. Now, with a single message, the clause was active. And the board. Most of them were my allies. Claire had been pushing a rebrand. She created a new fund, the Vision Collective. It pulled from our philanthropic reserves. She positioned herself as the face of the fund. Her name was on the banners, her photo on the press releases. She promised modern impact, youthful reform. But there was one problem. The paperwork for fund distribution still needed my signature. The clause had delayed the wire. That evening, I asked to speak to Claire privately. She smiled, tight-controlled, and followed me into a lounge. Michael stayed outside. I sat, calm, and I began Claire. I saw the tribute, the photos, the seating. I saw myself erased today. She didn't flinch. It wasn't intentional, Evelyn. You tend to read into things. The event team made aesthetic choices. I nodded, then pulled out a folder. Inside the founding documents, the clause, the reactivation letter. Her smile cracked. You can't. I already did. Then I handed her a printed email. Subject Vision Fund. Paused. Pending legacy review. I called our PR consultant that night. Hi, this is Evelyn. We'll be issuing a brief statement Monday morning. No quotes from the couple. Just me. It read, as co-founder of Greg and Evie's and chair of the Evelyn Thomas Foundation, I will be leading a 6-month legacy audit. We believe history is not something to be rewritten, but honoured. Our past built our present, and I intend to protect that truth. Claire's rebrand launch postponed, her vision tour cancelled, her interviews pulled. Before I left the wedding, I handed Michael an envelope. It contained a copy of the photo Claire had edited next to the original A Childhood drawing Michael once made of Mom and Dad's shop. A note that said, if you forget where you came from, someone else will write your story. I kissed his forehead. He didn't stop me. He didn't say a word. But he held the envelope tight. 2 days later, I walked into the original shop, the one Greg and I had built. The manager, Rosa, hugged me. She had been 19 when she started. Now she ran 3 locations. They came by last month, she whispered. Wanted to take down the old plaque. Said it didn't fit the new brand. She pointed at the back wall. The plaque still hung. A little dusty, a little crooked. But it said, founded by Evelyn and Gregory Thomas, built on love, sweat and sandwiches. I smiled, and I knew what came next. Monday, 8:15 a.m., I sent the statement. It was short, no drama, no bitterness, but it landed like thunder. We are re-centering the original mission of Greg and Evie's. Founders matter. Legacy matters. Truth matters. Within hours, the press reached out. Not for comment from the vision team. They wanted me. One headline read, "The forgotten founder reclaims her voice gracefully." The tribute video had already been posted. Claire's curated story, the one without me. But now people started asking questions. A former employee commented, "Where's Evelyn? She taught us to bake. She sat with us when we couldn't pay rent." Another added Greg and Evie's was her name too. You can't just airbrush her out. It wasn't outrage. It was loyalty from people who remembered. The post hit 500K views, then 1 million. Where is Evelyn started trending. A popular podcast host called. We'd love to have you on, Evelyn, not to attack anyone, just tell the real story. I hesitated, then said yes. We recorded in one take. I spoke of starting a business with no budget, raising a son while rolling dough, losing my husband. And then, losing my place? I never wanted credit, I said. But I didn't deserve to be erased. The episode exploded. Hundreds of thousands of downloads. Even the host cried. A week later, one of our oldest partners, Golden Harvest Schools, sent a letter. We will pause collaboration with the Vision Initiative we built with Evelyn. If she's not part of the new vision, neither are we. Other partners followed. Claire's rebrand began to unravel not from my hands, but from the hands of those who respected the truth. At the quarterly board meeting, I walked in with quiet confidence. Claire was there. So was Michael. I brought no lawyer, no entourage, just a small, worn folder with a paper clip. When asked if I had any opening remarks, I stood. This isn't about revenge. This isn't about ego. This is about truth and the cost of silence. I handed out copies of my speech. 3 board members wiped their eyes. 2 stood when I finished. Then came the vote. Leadership oversight would return to co-founder Evelyn Thomas for a transitional 12-month term. Unanimous. After the meeting, Michael caught up to me. We sat outside, just the two of us. He looked older, more tired than I remembered. "I didn't mean to let it happen, Mum," he whispered. "I thought staying neutral was safe." I nodded. "Neutrality always favors the one rewriting the story, Michael." He looked down, then reached into his coat. He pulled out the envelope I had given him at the wedding. I read it every night this week. His hands were shaking. "I'm sorry I forgot. But I remember now. I didn't shut Claire out. I didn't fire her. But I did redefine her role. She would no longer represent legacy. She would manage digital outreach under a new team I appointed. And the foundation, we renamed it the Evelyn Thomas Legacy Fund, rooted in grace, grown in truth. At our 30th anniversary gala, we rebuilt the memory wall. Not just mine, everyone's. The dishwasher who became a franchisee, the baker who had passed but taught us sourdough, the couple who met at booth 4. And yes, the original photo. Me, Michael, and Greg at the Grand Canyon. Unedited, unfiltered, real. When guests arrived, many paused at that photo. One whispered, "There she is." Not in shame, in honor. Power returned. The company was mine again for a time. The legacy had been reclaimed. But the woman in the mirror, she still had a scar. Reputation could be restored. But the pain of erasure that required something else. Healing, or leaving, or both. 3 weeks after the board meeting, I received a letter. It wasn't typed. It wasn't rehearsed. It was handwritten in ink, with pressure marks from where she pressed too hard. "Evelyn, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't know that I've earned it. But I want to say this plainly. I didn't realize how much I was trying to become you until I erased you. I was scared to live under your shadow. So I painted over it. But all I did was prove that I wasn't big enough to stand beside it. I'm sorry." "Claire?" I folded the letter carefully. Didn't cry. But I left it open on my desk for 3 days. Michael invited me for dinner. He said Claire wanted to cook, that she wanted to talk. I hesitated. My sister said, "Go. Not for them. For your own peace." I wore a simple blue cardigan Greg used to say it made my eyes look alive. When I arrived, Claire opened the door. She didn't speak, just stepped aside. Dinner was awkward, quiet. But after dessert, Claire said I didn't grow up with a mother who built things. So I didn't know how to respect one. She looked me in the eye. I know now. Michael brought out a photo album, not the one Claire had curated, one he'd built over the last 2 weeks. He passed it to me, page by page. Me rolling dough with him as a toddler. Me and Greg hanging the first shop sign. Me holding a check with trembling hands after our first profitable month. Then a photo I didn't know existed. Me asleep in the shop's back room, flour on my cheek. Michael curled beside me. On the back of the photo he had written, I forgot the story, but I never forgot the warmth. I pressed the photo to my chest. After dinner, Claire asked, "Would you be willing to sit on a panel with me for the next foundation event?" A conversation between 2 women who led, failed, and learned. I didn't answer right away. I looked at her, this woman who had tried to become the matriarch by removing the one who came before. Then I said, "Yes, but we tell the whole truth, and you don't edit a word." She nodded. At the foundation event, we sat side by side. Claire introduced me. Her voice broke when she said, "Please welcome Evelyn Thomas, the woman I once tried to replace and now proudly call my mentor." The audience rose in applause. I told my story not with venom, but with clarity. And I ended with this: power isn't taken. It's held together by truth, by grace, and by memory. When my 12-month term ended, I called a board meeting. I handed in a sealed envelope. Inside, my formal resignation from operational leadership. I stood and said I came back to protect the roots. Now that they're grounded again, I can return to the garden. I appointed Rosa, our longtime store manager, as the new CEO. She cried. Claire stayed on, but under Rosa's leadership. And me, I returned to the original shop, once a week, to bake, to listen, to remember. People asked, how did you not exile her? How can you break bread with someone who broke your legacy? I always answered the same. Because exile is easy, but healing, that's what creates a legacy worth passing on. Years ago, I believed power meant speaking the loudest. Then I thought it meant staying silent for peace. Now I've learned it's neither. True power is stillness, still enough to remember, still enough to choose, still enough to speak, not to prove, but to preserve. At the original shop, there's a new wall. It lists not just founders and executives, but the first delivery driver, the baker who created our sourdough, the dishwasher who later owned 2 franchises, the team that stayed when times were lean. At the top, it reads, built by many, protected by one. Underneath a small brass plate, Evelyn Thomas, co-founder, Mother Legacy. Bearer Michael and Claire come by every Sunday now. No cameras, no press, just 3 people. Sometimes 4 when the baby comes with them. Yes, they have a daughter now, named Grace. Claire's idea. One Sunday, Grace crawled toward the wall of photos I keep in my hallway. She pulled down a frame. It was the one Claire once replaced. Claire picked it up, kissed the corner, and said to her daughter, "That's your grandma. One day, I'll tell you how I almost forgot her, and how remembering saved us all." I keep a letter in my drawer, still addressed to Gregory, but the words changed. Greg. We built something real, something that almost vanished. I lost my place, but not my voice. I stepped away, but I returned. And I didn't return with anger. I came back with something better: wisdom, patience, and a stronger spine. Michael is learning. Claire is evolving. And I am whole again. You would be proud of how this ended, because it didn't end in fire. It ended in foundation. Love always, Evelyn. If you're still watching this, perhaps you've been here too. Erased, forgotten, misunderstood by the very people you helped build. Maybe you're a mother, a daughter, a mentor, a soul who held up the walls while others painted over you. Let me say this: you are not invisible. You are not replaceable. And your story still matters. If this story moved, you share it. Not for the algorithm, not for fame, but because someone out there is still standing at a wedding wall, wondering if they'll ever be seen again. Comment below. A time you remembered your own voice, or someone who helped you reclaim it. And if you'd like more stories of legacy love and quiet power, subscribe. Because this isn't the end. This is the beginning of something stronger.